I learned a lot. I really, really enjoyed working closely with people because when you work in animation, you come from a very, let's say, deep point or very sensitive point. Your creativity, you struggle with it. You struggle with it together with your comrades sitting around you. It's not easy. We don't, when we animate, we don't whistle. We really have frowns on our faces. We really work very hard because we push our limits all the time.
So, Michael, thanks so much for being with us here today and presenting such a beautiful film for us to watch with you. I just want to start, before kind of talking about the sort of Studio Ghibli involvement and so forth, I just want to just kind of go right back to the original idea. Was this something you had originally thought about doing, or was that something that came when you had the approach?
I had a tiny text lying in a drawer like 20 years ago. I thought it would be interesting to develop the story of a castaway on a desert tropical island. It was very different than we have seen now. It didn't involve turtles. But it was just in a drawer. I mean, it had very little future, and I'm not sure I would ever have made a feature film. I'm used to making short films and commercials. If I didn't get a letter totally out of the blue from Studio Ghibli in Tokyo, Japan. This, for the rare person here who doesn't know Studio Ghibli, they make amongst the most amazing animated films in Japan. Films I adore, and I think without exception all my colleagues adore as well. And they sent me a letter. I mean, you don't receive letters like this, but they sent a letter saying, "We like your short film Father and Daughter a lot. I mean, a lot. We think it's a Japanese film, and have you considered making a long film? But because if you are interested, we would be interested in co-producing it together with Wild Bunch in Paris." And well, I was in shock.
And so what happened from then in terms of you contacted them back again, presumably, and I mean, did you immediately think, yes, this could be the project, or how did what you ended up working on end up coming to be?
I probably hesitated for 1 or 2 seconds, and then I thought, no, this is too good to be true. Definitely, this must be. So I replied straight away. Well, I'm actually very, very interested, but could you please explain a bit more, because I'm not sure I understood. And of course, they confirmed, no, we are serious. And then I thought, okay, I need a story now. I need something. I can't just say yes and then daydream. I must think now of something. This is incredible. And very, very quickly, the theme came back in my mind, the famous theme of a castaway on a tropical island. We've all known it. I've known it since childhood. I loved it as a child. I loved it. I adored it. I wasn't attracted to the idea of how to survive in the wild. That's been done beautifully over and over again. I was more interested in the idea of how do you feel being alone in nature, and who are you really? Because you don't have society to mirror you. You don't have anyone to mirror you. You are your true self. But what is that? And so that came very, very quickly. And so I met with them, of course, and they said, when I asked them a Japanese style film, they said, no, propose something, propose a design, propose a story. It doesn't have to be like Father and Daughter or like Studio Ghibli film. Just let's see where we can go. It may not work. It's risky for us. It's risky for you. It's a huge and ambitious adventure. But let's take it step by step.
And did you know right from the outset that it was going to be dialogue free? Obviously, the sound effects are very important in the film, but there's no dialogue. Was that something you knew right from the start, or was that as the process developed?
That was as the process developed. It actually, in the script, it had some lines. There was some dialogue, a minimum of dialogue, because I truly believed we needed it for 2 reasons. Of course, for the empathy, to bring us closer to the characters. But let's face it, you say something when you meet a woman. You say the son says something. You've just seen the film. The son's supposed to say something. to his parents. So I'd written the dialogue, and it didn't feel 100% right. We worked on it. The months went by. I had help. I had help from a co-writer, Pascal Ferrand. She said, dialogue needs some work. It doesn't feel right. And we went backwards and forwards, and in the end, we dropped it. And the challenge was how to tell the story and people hardly noticing that there's no dialogue.
And in terms of the storyboarding process, obviously the script is so important. So the script that you had written, it was all completely direction, was it presumably, in terms of the final shooting script? And then how did the sort of storyboard process sort of develop from that?
Very simply, I started with the synopsis that's quickly written. It was very different again, still without a turtle. Then they said, listen, this is interesting, give us a script. So I spent roughly half a year on literally writing a script. That was a new discipline for me. Like many animators, I don't write, I draw. But I was really interested to see how quickly I could tell the story. It would have taken me too long otherwise. And then when they approved of that, they said when they saw it 6 months later with the number of drawings that I did, like the drawings to set the style, they said, we really like the basic idea. There's some weak parts, but they can be resolved eventually as you go in the next phase. And the next phase is the storyboard, where you just simply do thousands of drawings to tell the story. That took me much longer. That took me about a bit more than 4 years. Sometimes alone, sometimes with help, sometimes with some top quality help. But it was just very difficult, being my first film. But also, it's the story is very pure. It's very simple. How do you tell it without losing the spectator? That was my biggest concern. For instance, there's one moment where all the characters are happy. There's the mother, the father, and a little boy. It's very harmonious. There's no tension. There's no suspense. Now that's hard to tell. And at the same time, keep it concise. At the same time, really tell it in such a way that time passes slowly.
And you were obviously sort of based over in sort of France and Belgium making the film, and Ghibli obviously are based over in Japan. So how did that kind of practically work? We know that they put up some money for the film, but artistically, how were they involved, and how did that come about?
Yeah, so the film was made in Studio Prima Linea in Paris and mostly in Angoulême, and then for 4 months in Belgium because they were co-producers. And already with the script, but more importantly with the storyboard, I would travel occasionally to Japan and just to show them the progress. And in the beginning, I asked them questions. I'm talking about Takata, Isao Takata, the director of Princess Kaguya, for instance. He was producer on this, not director. And Suzuki, who is also together with Takata and Miyazaki, the three main guys who were there, who founded Studio Ghibli. Suzuki is very creative. He's producer, but also very intuitive and very creative. And I spoke with them, mostly with Takata, who was actually the spokesperson for Studio Ghibli. And I asked him questions, asked him, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? Is this clear, etc.? And he was taken a bit by surprise. He said, so you want our opinion? And I said, actually, it's more than that. I need your opinion. This is very challenging. It's very big. I need to learn at fast speed. I need your help. Not only like technical opinion about storytelling and the narrative suspense, etc., but also just your feelings. How do you see the symbolism? How do you see the emotions, etc.? And they agreed. They gave very valuable opinions, very valuable. I didn't take all their opinions because some work really well for me and some less. But on the whole, they were valuable. And so either in meetings or by writing, and sometimes two representatives would come from Studio Ghibli to Paris to speak with me. So on the whole, especially Takata was influential on the story and the finesse of the story. He's extraordinarily fine. If you've seen My Neighbors the Yamada, which is a film which does the impossible, it's a film animated film about haikus. You don't use haikus in animation. It's too fine, it's too quiet, it's too pure. He did, and he did beautifully. So in the end, I felt very grateful for him. So that's why he's in credits as artistic producer.
And any film, the music is obviously completely crucial, but in a film where there's no dialogue, I guess it's something we're even more aware of. And I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about finding the right kind of musical feel, and just out of interest, because you talked before about the background of the composer. Just tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. In my short films, I haven't done that many, but half a dozen. There, the music came at the same time as the story. The music was my driving force, and also the guide of the timing of the short film. It really nourished my visual side in the film. In this film, in the beginning, I didn't have any vision of the music. I couldn't conceive what kind of music it would have. Logically, I thought it should have impressionistic music, because the emotions of people like Debussy would work beautifully with this film. Okay, I thought, okay, just wait, it will come. A few months went by, it didn't come. A year went by, it didn't come. Several years went by, it still didn't come. We started animating, I still didn't have the idea of the music. I knew by the time there would be no sharp synchronization, because then the music would take too much foreground, it would take too much space. I had a composer at that moment, but it didn't work out. And only when the animation was more or less finished, did we find a composer. We looked at different proposals. And Laurent Pérez-Delmar, who is the composer, he lives in Paris, and he did a beautiful proposal, very simple little tune. And I met, and it clicked, and intuitively we felt right to work together. And he, not only was he good, but he was fast. And we just met once or twice a week where he proposed the latest bits. And sometimes I had comments, sometimes not. Sometimes he did something against my wish, and it either worked beautifully or not at all. And yes, incidentally, you just asked, this is not an unusual guy. I don't know how old he is. I think about 40 or 45. He's a medical doctor. He was practicing medical doctor in the emergency department, but felt such a passion for for music, for composing, that he went back to study music, and he is a full-time music composer right now.
And could you just tell us a little bit about the actual process in terms of the sound effects in the film as well?
The sound effects were organized by a solid, well-established company called Piste Rouge. My brief was no cartoon sounds, realistic sounds. As you can see, throughout the film, you see a lot of the surf of the waves on the beach. Not big ones, but the little waves. You see a lot of birds. You see a lot of branches moving gently in the breeze. Especially the surf on the beach can be very irritating when you hear it over and over and over again in every sequence, because we had temporary sounds, and it really was irritating. The birds also, because they need to be sharp, but they were very, very, very present. So that was my other brief to them: avoid the irritation factor at all costs. And we got actors in to do the voices. Of course, they don't talk, but they cough, they laugh, they breathe heavily, etc. And we did something that took me by surprise. It was the voice specialist, a lady called Christine, who suggested it. We asked the actors to breathe all the scenes where they are present in a film. In other words, whenever you see a human being, we recorded the sound of breathing, even if it's a quiet, human being is in a quiet posture. And that turned out to be a good idea, because you don't always hear it, but it's there. And it creates an empathy on an unconscious level. It doesn't communicate big messages, but it communicates, he is one of us, he is human. He's not that drawn character all over there. He is one of us. It's a combination of things. I'm an intuitive storyteller, which means that I get the idea first, and it just feels right. Oh God, this feels so right. This is it. I keep this idea. And then later I stand back and look at it rationally and see if it fits in the context, etc. And a lot of ideas in the film, even the turtle. When suddenly I realized it's the turtle we want. We want a marine turtle. I felt so happy. I didn't say to myself why, etc. That came much later, just to make sure it worked. So the story and the way it's told are conceived intuitively. I think by osmosis I've absorbed a lot from Studio Ghibli and Japan in general. One of the first things they did was send me a book called Kwaidan by Lafcadio Hearn, which is, if you don't know it, it's fairy tales from Japan. They call it ghost stories. They are very emotional, very, very intense, very interesting about the relationship between animals and human beings. And I didn't use ideas from the book, but I think I absorbed more than I realized, and certainly I observed the intense emotions in the book. I drew a map very early on. The island's not totally coherent, but enough for the story. And like, for instance, the crevasse doesn't feel exactly in the right position, but it's strong enough for the story. And I needed just to have the feeling of a tropical island. So I visited a small island in the Indian Ocean, Ladik, one of the Seychelles Islands. And there I got lots of ideas, like there's a centipede, so I absorbed that idea to use a centipede, certain cloud formations, the rocks. I chose that island because the rocks they're very ancient granite rocks. They're almost sensual because they have beautiful round shape. And I found those inspiring. And just to hear certain birds, certain sounds at night and during the day. Also, it's you just, as a filmmaker, you just need, and that's one of the secrets of this film, and I think all films. You need to absorb a lot of inspiration just from doing research, and it's not like, oh, I have to do research. It's more like, I want to find out. I'm so curious, and it can be a small thing like some photos on the internet, a magazine you find in a waiting room, but ideally just being there, just walking around, and just absorbing through the senses rather than mentally. A man arrives on an island. It's not his home. He wants to go home. So immediately I had a nice tension for the story. That's very easy. He is not Robinson Crusoe who starts building chairs and tables, etc. He just wants to go home. An island, we say a tropical island is paradise. It's not. Even the most beautiful islands are not. It's not when you're there, it's obvious, but you go mad with loneliness. There too I did research, and some people just simply die. They get crazy. So he wants to go home, and something holds him back. Then I thought, now we have got an interesting direction. What's holding him back? And very quickly I thought it should be a marine creature, ideally quite a large one, because they're nice and mysterious. All marine creatures are mysterious, but especially the large ones. I scanned turtle immediately. It's as simple as that. But there's something else. At that moment it was intuitive. There's something extremely moving about turtle, and I already saw that I remember when I was in primary school. A marine turtle is a peaceful, fairly lone creature in the ocean. The ocean is infinity. She leaves infinity, her home, where she totally blends in and belongs, to go on a beach. It's a huge effort, but she just has to do it. There's no question. She climbs on the beach, digs a hole, lays her eggs, fills the hole. I've literally seen one doing it. I was so lucky, but you can see plenty on YouTube. This is an incredible effort, and I was genuinely worried. And there was someone standing there and asked the person, "Should we carry her? Because she's not. Look, she's not moving. She's not going to survive." She did survive, and she crawled back by herself. And then she goes back in the ocean where she belongs, into an infinity. Now, I don't know if it communicates, but when you tell it like that, I find that very beautiful. I find it by itself beautiful, but also as a metaphor. So then intuitively, I felt the turtle felt right. But then later, when I looked at it like this, like I tell you, I was even more convinced. Secondly, a turtle breathes. He or she, but of course, egg-laying turtles, she has arms and legs. She can go out of the ocean on land. There's something we feel certain empathy towards the animal, and at the same time, it's a reptile. It has a very hard shell. It has a fierce expression on her face. She's not too cute, and that really appealed to me. It's not a soft animal with big, gentle eyes. It's a reptile. When you swim with a turtle, you don't want to touch her. You feel just this tiny little distance, and that really interested me.
And having made a number of shorts and advertisements, so forth over the year, and now having this opportunity to make this feature film, has that kind of now is your appetite kind of for that kind of gone, or is that something now you could imagine? I mean, is there a second film already kind of percolating?
It nearly killed me. No, but everybody who has been in feature animation, you know how hard it is. It's just bizarre. It's ridiculous that we make a film. It's so much work. Yeah. And I'm not. Most members of the team were okay because under French law you have a maximum of 39 hours a week. You're working. That's for freelance animators and background artists, etc. For the director, the law doesn't apply. And I learned a lot. I really enjoyed working closely with people because you when you work in animation. You come from a very, let's say, deep point or very sensitive point. Your creativity, you struggle with it. You struggle with it together with your comrades sitting around you. It's not easy. We don't, when we animate, we don't whistle. We really have frowns on our faces. We really work very hard because we push our limits all the time. So when you work with people like that for several years, now imagine the bond we have created, and especially when you're in a small city, in this case Angoulême in France, you see each other after work, you're in the same building in Prima Linea. It was fabulous. So all that together, yes, no, of course I enjoyed it. What my projects are from now on, I don't know yet. I really don't know yet. It's still a miracle that any feature film gets financed. I mean, let's face it, that's a miracle.